Hey guys, welcome to Fourth Wall Reactions. Today I'm gonna take a look back at Series 3 of Doctor Who. I always want to let a little bit of time pass before I do these kind of things, but then I also don't want to wait to start the next series, so I said, I'll just watch the Christmas special, which I've done. Well, I'll just watch one or two of the episodes, which I've done. So it always gets to the point where I'm like, okay, I just have to stop everything and just sort of focus and just do this. Because it warrants a look back. Partially because that was Miss Martha Jones' only full series as the companion. And partly because they kind of threw a curveball at the end by introducing, kind of late to the game, the Master. And I understand that Saxon was sprinkled throughout, but I mean, there wasn't much to do plot-wise with him until episode 11. So that whole ending arc kind of required a little time to just sit back and have a little think. But I'm going to start with Martha, though. I really, really loved Martha. And I started out on kind of on an interesting note with her and with the series in general. Series 3 was kind of an interesting experience. So coming off of Series 2, which was granted a new Doctor, but switching from Eccleston to Tennant from Series 1 to 2 wasn't that big of a shock to me because I knew that was coming. So I was kind of like, okay. And then we still had Rose in Series 2, and I didn't know when she was going to go. So when that whole storyline wrapped up, like culminated in that, great multi-parter at the end of Series 2, I was like, wow. And then not only did I lose Rose, I lost all the adjacent Tylers and Mickey. So that was just like a big switch. And then the Christmas special just like came roaring in with Donna, who you cannot miss. Love her or hate her, you cannot miss Donna. And that was like a head spinner. And a pretty intense story, and one that just had just a lot of energy. So we have this heightened experience with saying goodbye to Rose, and this heightened experience with like Donna. And then I started Series 3. And of course, the first episode, you're just introducing people. You're just introducing who Martha is. You're just introducing her family. You have a nice little one episode arc to just sort of kick things off. And it was good. It was solid. But because it was a beginning episode, it wasn't like, Martha didn't just like hit me right out of the gate the same way that I've been smacked with Donna. and also the last time I saw Rose, it was just so intense. So it was kind of like and I think just the way I was watching them too, it's not like I was watching them back to back, but I was watching them within the span of weeks within each other, which I think if you're watching them when they aired, you had time to sort of adjust. You had time to get used to Rose going away. Got to experience the Christmas special. I'm not sure how much time there was, but it was probably more time than what I experienced. So the emotions were riding high with Rose, and they were riding high with Donna, and then we started Series 3. And it was a good, solid start. It just... I came out of it just not knowing whether I was going to like Martha at all. She seemed smart, she seemed sweet, and that's what I was going with. And then very quickly, in the second episode, which I loved and was actually one of my personal favorites of the series. It's like going on this journey with the Doctor just sort of revealed her whole personality. She had humor, she had bravery, she had compassion, she just had all these things which were really great. And I had a really fun time with that first episode with her, and it just kept growing. I think she was a really great match for the Doctor, temperament wise. They had a similar mindset, I think, both being scientists. And I always like when that came into play throughout this series. Yeah, I just thought she was spectacular. And in sort of thinking about her overall, when I was looking back on this series, I was thinking, Rose had her missteps and her learning experiences, as we all do. And, Donna, even just within that one Christmas special, I mean, granted, it was extended, but it was just the one, had a lot of ups and downs. And Martha was very steadfast with the doctor. And there weren't sort of a lot of like, oh, Martha, why are you doing that? Moments. She worked well with him. She did what he asked when he asked it. She took initiative when she needed to. There weren't that many moments of like, and here's where Martha screws everything up. And, maybe just contrasting her with Rose just for a second. I don't like pitting them against each other because they are very different people. But, Rose being in her late teens and, kind of more impulsive. I think Martha's a little older than that, and she's just not impulsive, doesn't seem to be that much part of her nature. So, in looking for those moments, there really weren't very many where it was like, oh, Martha. I was like, she's almost too perfect. But then I kind of thought about it, and really Martha's one real big issue, and it kind of ties into her feelings for the doctor, is that she just does everything for everyone else. I was just thinking back to the opening where she was on the phone just trying to be the one to smooth things over with her family. She was the go-between. She's the eldest child, I believe. And she just seems to be the one who has to take care of everything for everybody. And she does a great job at it. And she was very loyal to the doctor during the time that he was human. So Martha is fantastic at taking care of everyone else. But she never really did anything for herself until the very end. And I was kind of thinking, like, well, why is Martha going, now? Why is it only a one season, one series kind of thing? And I don't know what external factors that were happening, but just looking at the writing of it, and when she came back and she said, I can't remember exactly what she said, but when she took a stand and says, I need to do this for me. I need to say no, and I need to move on.
So this is me. Getting out.
That was a huge, huge decision, I think. She didn't seem to be making those decisions for herself all series. It was just all for other people. So I think she's a very compassionate, loving, loyal. She kind of makes her very Hufflepuffy. We'll get to the sorting. So anyway, those are my thoughts on Martha. I really did enjoy her. I'm going to miss her. And I do love that they left the door open so that she can come back. Now, Jack, even though he was only in a couple of episodes, he always leaves a big impression because he's Jack. I liked having confirmation of the things I was suspicious of at the end of series 1, where it was like, Rose brought him back to life. And then they left him behind. Why'd they leave him behind? And so I really liked having resolution for that quite a bit. And I thought that the conversation that he and the doctor had when Jack was in that radioactive chamber was really interesting. And the doctor mentioning the fact that even the TARDIS was trying to shake him. And this, weird thing that Jack has going on. And I know I'll learn more about it once I get to Torchwood and everything. But it's interesting hearing that even the TARDIS was trying to shake him. Like, no, you don't be around the doctor. It's not good. And yet it turned out just fine. So, I don't know. I thought that he had really great chemistry with both Martha and the doctor. I mean, who doesn't he have good chemistry with? I suppose there's someone, some creature, some person out there that's like, oh, this guy. But generally he's like, and people just sort of melt. It's hilarious. And that twist with the Face of Boe, I understand from some of the comments that it's not really a confirmed canon thing, that they don't really delve too much into it later. So I don't quite know what to make of it, but I thought what a fun twist for the man that can never die. And it made me wonder, I mean, if he's alive that far into the future, I mean, how much of himself can he even remember? Does he even remember that he was once Captain Jack Harkness? He remembers the doctor. I do understand that he probably couldn't say anything to the doctor about all the stuff that was happening because of messing up timelines and all of that. But I can't imagine the number of times that they actually crossed. So the Face of Boe crossed with Christopher Eccleston in the second episode of Series 1. And then they didn't cross in the long game, but they were talking about the Face of Boe. And I remembered in Series 2, early on, with the New Earth, the new. So it was really interesting at all of those instances that they didn't say, actually, we know each other. They just give him a little something. But I don't know if this concept of Jack being the Face of Boe had been thought up at that point. So whether or not it was a planned thing or just like they saw the opportunity and they went there and it's just what it is, it was still a lot of fun. I had fun with it. It was good. And I do look forward to seeing Torchwood eventually. I don't know when. Hopefully the things that people have been saying in the comments will have faded from my memory. Y'all gotta stop telling me storylines. Of course, I have to talk about the Master. I'm a little hesitant. One thing when talking about the Master after episodes 12 and 13, my thoughts on him were, of course, only referencing that episode. I probably should have said, but I really liked the Master when he was Derek Jacobi. Including at the very end of Utopia when he was evil Derek Jacobi, because Derek Jacobi's fantastic at being evil. I know I didn't have the best reaction to John Simm, and when I say best reaction, I don't mean like good or bad reaction, but I didn't respond to him very well. And it's kind of good that I've taken some time and sort of thought back on it and kind of figured out why. I felt, and I believe I said this in one of the reactions, I felt that he was actually very effective when he was being serious. The humor didn't land so well with me, and maybe that's partially the performance or the writing, I don't know. Partially, it's I never respond well to this trope of wacky humor in being used to indicate that someone's crazy. I never respond well to that. And it's not something specific to Doctor Who. It's just a trope. It happens in shows and movies and I'm trying to think of books. But it's kind of like the Irish guy in Braveheart. It's kind of a sort of well-known example that I can think of off the top of my head, where he claims to talk to God and that God's telling him that the island is his. And everyone's like, wow, he is. Woo, crazy. And I would argue in every other instance in that movie, he is perfectly lucid. He responds to people in a contextual manner. He's not living in some fantasy world. Maybe he has this one little weird thing, but he's definitely not crazy. And I think he uses that little bit of, well, God tells me the island's mine, as a way, he knows it's funny. He's aware of the impact that these words have on people. I mean, my boyfriend at the time, we would always talk about this. He's like, why don't you like the Irish guy? I love the Irish guy. I'm just telling you, He's not crazy. They're just using this little wacky bit of humor to try and indicate that he is. But then they didn't go further. Now, I don't want to make this all about that, but that's just an example. So the moments of the Master's humor, which really did work for me, they were both very telling too. The murder in the chamber, when he released the gas and he had his gas mask on, he was like, that was funny, not because this little bit was funny, but because he's in the midst of murdering people and he has no emotional feeling about that. He does not care. He is completely devoid of any sort of empathy or concern, which is very sociopathic. So the little like thumbs up, that's right, I'm crazy, is it's used in contrast with that. And it's the contrast that makes that dark humor of like, God, he's something is wrong with him that he can be so cavalier about murdering all these people. And again, with the journalist and closing and opening the door, and as you can see, he was doing that to have an effect on his wife. And again, he has no concern for what's happening in the other room. He doesn't care that she's being murdered. And so that's where that dark, uncomfortable humor can really work and can really illustrate that he's got a little something going on. He is not, he doesn't exhibit any sort of empathy or care for human beings. And part of it's because he's a Time Lord and sees himself as above it all. But the other moments of humor didn't work for me, and that may be a reason why. I'm not a fan of that particular trope. And it happens a lot in shows and movies and stuff, so. I did get that the Doctor and the Master were kind of being used as sort of a mirror of one another. One with feeling and compassion and care, and one totally without. And those moments worked. The end of 13 really worked for me. I thought it was really interesting when the Master was still Derek Jacobi and he was still human. Very interesting that his sort of persona was a professor. The exact same as the Doctor's when he was when his human persona was a professor in human nature. And I found Derek Jacobi's performance as human Master, as Professor Yana, to very much mimic that sort of like excited energy that Tennant gets and that Eccleston got too, as well. Like, it's just how the Doctor responds to information that he's very excited about. Excited to meet new people and see new things. And, oh, look what this does. And isn't this interesting? And, oh, blah, blah. So that I found just spot on. So I guess having said all that, it's not that I don't like the character. Maybe I just didn't respond to the performance. And the whole experience with the Master made me more excited to check out different versions of him and see what they're like. So I am looking forward to some classic Who. Tell ya, once I check out some classic Who, that'll be really interesting to kind of do a compare and contrast. So. And as for other characters throughout Series 3, I thought there were a lot of really great sort of 1 or 2 episode characters that were a lot of fun. I should probably talk about them in conjunction with the episode rankings spectrum. You know what I do. In case this is your first review that you're listening to, I can't rank stuff. I cannot put one episode above another if I really like it. So I tend to sort of just like group them into little categories of like the strongest ones or the ones that I responded to the most, and then like the ones I didn't. So it's a very loose ranking. So the episodes that I really enjoyed the most and that have stuck with me and that I really, I think will be on my mind going forward. I know that Blink was a big deal and it was a great episode, but I found that I just kept coming back to the 2-parter of Human Nature and the Family of Blood. I think because it was just such a great story to have the Doctor sort of be removed from that Time Lord persona that he's in, that we normally see him in and enjoy him in, and just see like the human side that could be and still could be. I assume, I don't know if it's a one-time only thing to transform yourself that way. If they said it, I have forgotten it, so I'm sure I'll be watching those episodes again. I think that two-parter was really great. It had sort of the scary stuff that I actually really enjoy, even though I freak out about it. I do enjoy it. You know, it had interesting aliens, it had interesting side characters, supporting characters. So yeah, those two were at the top for me. And Blink is up there. I really did enjoy Blink. Give this kind of the Dr. Light episode, but you know, it's kind of iconic. So it was a scary, fun, very well written and directed episode. So that's in there. I did really love Utopia, in part because of Jack and Derek Jacobi. I still have questions about it. I wish that some of the things that have been brought up in it were more fully developed through to the end. So I kept wondering about the pointy tooth people and how they related to the people, humans, and how they got there. I know there were explanations, but there was a lot of information being thrown around in those last 3 episodes, so I just wish there had been sort of more time to explore all that and sit with it. But I still really loved that episode for many reasons. And also the last of the Time Lords. I think everything was wrapped up really well. I enjoyed that story arc quite a bit. And then just some of my personal favorites. I loved the Shakespeare Code. It's part because it's going back in time. It's Shakespeare. It's a bunch of, theater humor. But it was the first proper sort of outing with Martha. I know that they had that first episode with her, but the adventure sort of came to her, and this was sort of him pulling her into the adventure. Yeah, so I had so much fun watching that episode. So that's on my list of favorites. And the last 2 series review, I always forget to include the Christmas special. I think because really I view the Christmas special as it being its own thing and not really being of one series or another. But I'm going to go ahead and include the Runaway Bride here. Just because the series 2 finale just felt like such a, we're closing the book and now here we go. So even though there wasn't a whole lot from the Christmas special that led into this series, like being a totally different companion and everything, I'm going to go ahead and throw it in as one of my favorite episodes of the series, even though it's like kind of not. So those are my tops. And then sort of in this is really solid episode that I enjoyed, with the exception of the Shakespeare Code and the Runaway Bride. All of those favorite episodes were towards the end. This was a really interesting series for me because it almost seemed like sort of 2 separate ones in one series. A little like how The Walking Dead does their seasons. They have a 16-episode season, and they kind of do like 8-episode arc and then another 8-episode arc. Because this, to me, felt like halfway through, it just sort of switched into another gear. And all the episodes leading up to the end were just like really good, really intense. Not that these other episodes were not good, but they were just they just felt a little separate from the episodes that concluded the series. I really did like all the philosophical goings on in the Lazarus Experiment. I enjoyed that. I know people were kind of like, oh, the bad CGI and stuff, but I mean, that's fine. I didn't think it was all that bad. I've seen worse. I can let that stuff slide. I did like 42 quite a bit. It did have echoes of The Impossible Planet and Satan Pit, but I love those episodes, so I didn't mind that. I did like Smith and Jones. It was a solid starter. That was good. And I like the concept of the plasmavore. Actually, I'm sometimes referring to vampires as plasmaphores now because it's a great word. I enjoyed Gridlock, and I enjoyed the first part of the Dalek two-parter, the Daleks of Manhattan, just on the strength of the characters. I loved Tallulah. She was just funny. So I kind of got a kick out of that. So really the only episode of the series that I was kind of like, oh, I don't know, was the conclusion of that two-parter, which was the evolution of the Daleks. And I probably said this in the commentary then, but I just felt like the build-up for it just kind of, the conclusion was somehow unsatisfying. I don't know why. Some things just are. And then there is one episode that I still don't know how I feel about it. And that's The Sound of Drums. Because plot-wise, I really enjoyed it. I liked the story. But because I was so kind of taken aback by the Master, I just don't know how to reconcile those two things. So I'm just not ranking it. It's out there and it warrants a little more thought on my part. In watching The Sound of Drums, I really didn't have anyone sort of spoil me on the Master. I had a lot of people building up Saxon this and Saxon that, and I tried to not hear it because I like to go in as blind as possible. I'm glad I didn't know too much about the Master. I had never really heard of that character before. And I was just feeling like from the writing of that episode that he was supposed to be written as, an evil villain that you enjoy, since they're enjoying their evilness. You know what I mean? We all have those villains on our shows that you sort of love how evil they are. And that's what I was getting from the writing. I wasn't feeling like, oh, I have to find him, I have to like him or not like him or whatever. I was just feeling like my response to him is not sort of where the writing is going with him. And there were also a couple of like super unsavory parts that didn't sit well with me. And it actually, now that I think about it, weren't in The Sound of Drums. It was in The Last of the Time Lords. It was when he had Martha's family held captive all that year. And he dressed up the ladies in the little maids' outfits and dressed up the dad in a janitor's and had them serve. That's another trope that is kind of... I always think of the very well-known story of Nichelle Nichols talking about Whoopi Goldberg seeing her as Uhura. Seeing Nichelle Nichols as Uhura and being inspired to be an actress. She saw Uhura on Star Trek and...
I ran through the house, screaming, "Hey, come quick, everybody. There's a black lady on television and she ain't no maid."
That was such a well-known stereotype that literally at one point, if you were an African-American or, black actor of any nationality, that's all you were going to be cast as a servant. And so that trope is still kind of an issue. I remember it coming up too when The Help was nominated for awards and Viola Davis talked about it and Octavia Spencer talked about it. But I just found it very that the Master was sort of giving them the little cutesy maids outfits and making them work for him. It was not a good look. I understand he's evil and all that, but throwing it, just no. And then what made me more uncomfortable, too, was seeing Lucy Saxon. Because in The Sound of Drums, I knew she was hypnotized, but she seemed to be more of an equal co-conspirator for some reason. She was worried about, the reporter's going to find out what we're doing, and she just seemed to be in on it with him. Granted, that could have been just that she was really deep under hypnosis. And then in The Last of the Time Lords, when we see her, and she's all dressed up in this sort of red slinky outfit, and her body language is still like very lovey-dovey with him, but her face was just totally blank. And I gotta give kudos to that actress. She did a great job. I was really enjoying her. I was finding her very amusing in The Sound of Drums, but when it came to Last of the Time Lords, I was just like, this is very uncomfortable. You have someone who is under the influence and you're taking physical advantage of them. That is no. It's another no. So it doesn't really matter how entertaining or not I found the Master. I was just like, dude, I cannot enjoy you because this is no. So that was just my take of him. I may have a totally different response to a version of the Master who is written differently. I don't know. The less I know about it, though, the better. It's always hard to know what's a spoiler and what's trivia when it comes to Classic Who and the comments. Because I do eventually want to watch and hopefully react to some Classic Who. And I don't think it's a spoiler to say, well, the Master was, he's an old nemesis of the Doctor. I mean, that's just... It gets to be a spoiler when people tell me things like when you start telling me plot points, that's when it gets spoilery. So I'm less inclined to do reactions to Classic Who the more you tell me about actual plots and actual character outcomes. So that's kind of where I'm at with Classic Who spoilers. So, I mean, you can talk to me about the Master, but just if you could try and avoid really specific things that he does in the older episodes, that would be great. That would actually help a lot. Okay, so I have been talking for 40 minutes. Less than last time was an hour. But my voice is kind of failing me. So I wasn't really planning on doing a full character house sorting. But I can say that a lot of the major characters, newer characters that appeared, this was a really Slytherin-heavy season. Because obviously the Master, he wants world dominion. He wants universal dominion. He's a Slytherin. That's like a no-brainer. I feel like of Martha's family, I feel like everyone except Martha and maybe the brother, they were Slytherin. Tish was very ambitious, in a good way. Got her into some trouble, but she was ambitious. And that's a hallmark of Slytherin, obviously. Well, maybe not obviously if you don't know Slytherin. So the brother, I don't know that I knew well enough to kind of sort him into a house. He had kind of a Hufflepuffy feel. To me, he was looking after his own stuff and his own family, and but who knows? I didn't know him that well, so I can't sort him. Jack's kind of difficult to sort. I do still have a feeling he's Slytherin too, though, in the best ways. As far as Martha goes, I'm stumped because really, I don't see much Slytherin in her at all. Although one could say that the goal of becoming a doctor is prestigious, so that in and of itself may be termed a Slytherin kind of thing, but it's equally a Ravenclaw thing for knowledge being the driving force in your life, science. So, I mean, she's definitely got Ravenclaw. She's very brave, so she would do well in Gryffindor. She's the hub of her family. She's incredibly loyal. She was incredibly loyal to the Doctor. She could easily do well in Hufflepuff. I don't know. I don't think I can sort Martha at this point. So yeah, I can't sort her. It's a 3-way tie between Ravenclaw, Gryffindor, and Hufflepuff. I don't know. If you were a sorting hat, which house would you sort Martha into? Open question. Alright guys, that is it for me in Series 3, which I really loved. Some really fantastic moments. A great companion. Got to see Jack again, which I didn't in Series 2, so there you go. Got to run around in Shakespearean England. It's always a plus. I met Weeping Angels finally. And I got the crap scared out of me by scarecrows. So it was a really lovely series. I enjoyed it very much. I will miss Martha, but I suspect that by them leaving the door open that she could come back at some point. We may see her again. All right, guys, thanks so much for joining me for this series. Really appreciate all your comments and your support. Of course, feel free to join me for series 4. I've already started recording. And it looks like it's going to be a good one. So I will see you guys there. Thanks for watching. Bye.